You made a very valid point earlier when you were talking about this, and this is kind of a two-part question I wanted to talk to you about. Um, when I grew up in the '90s, so you saw guys like Deion Sanders, Bo
Oh yeah,
Jackson, Ken Griffey Jr., and they were being mass marketed, not just necessarily by baseball, but by shoe companies,
yes.
by other endorsements, obviously, sports drink franchises or soda franchises or what have you. And then it seemed like it dropped off. Can we get back to that point where we see some of these new stars that are coming in to the league have that same type of power? Because it seems like some of the players don't even want that notoriety.
Yeah, and that's why I think we need to take that page from the Negro Leagues. You need that charisma. You need those charismatic athletes. We need baseball to move away a little bit from that tradition-rich nature that has always governed this sport. Or again, as my friend Buck O'Neill would say of them, that the major leaguers, Nick, would accuse them of showboating. A guy would go into the hole, dive, flip it behind his back, start the double play. Well, today that's a Sports Center top 10 highlight virtually every night of the week. But the major leaguers would say they were showboating. But as Buck would say, if you got something to show, show it. And it's only showboating when you can't do it. Yeah, and so they need a little bit of that bravado. You need that star power. Bo Jackson brought that. Deion Sanders brought that. Here's a guy who gets off a helicopter, plays a football game, gets off a helicopter, and then go plays in a World Series game. And that kind of athleticism that was so much a part, the speed that came to the game when the Negro Leagues moved into the Major League Baseball. The
Mm-hmm.
pace of the game was so much more faster. And so I think we need that back in our game again. There's some great baseball players. They really are. There's some of they're well-trained athletes, but man, the game is a little slow now. It's a home run strikeout game. And which is again, I'm old school, so I guess ain't nothing wrong with that, but I would rather see movement. I
Right.
want to see guys stealing bases and doing these kinds of things. Now the analytics says, that's not good anymore. And so but all I know is our 2014 and 2015 Kansas City Royals were the last team to play what I would call a Negro League style of play.
Mm.
Yeah. And all I know is that they had you sitting on the edge of their seats because they obviously pitched the ball extremely well. They could catch the ball extremely well, and they could run. And I was on a call not too long ago with our great general manager Dayton Moore, and we were talking about the 2015 World Series when Lorenzo Cain scores from first base on a single against the Toronto Blue Jays. Man, you tell me what's more exciting than that? He scored. That's cool, Papa Bell. You know what I'm saying? He scores from and the
Yeah.
joy that permeated. Has a pop up slide at home plate, and the clubhouse just erupts. And that year, and 14 and 15, man. But you got to have great athletes to play that way. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't do that with just anybody. You got to have great athletes. But what happens? This started to permeate throughout that clubhouse. And so when you can steal a base and everybody in the ballpark knows you're going to try and steal that base. Now, obviously, they don't know what pitch you're going on. You can feel the energy level rise. Now, if you're just waiting for a guy to hit a home run, yeah, that's exciting if he hits it. But man, it's just, it just raises your level. It creates a level of excitement. And again, to get that great athlete, you know, uh, for me, I'm trying to think. Deion Sanders, the Ken Griffey Juniors of the world, they could have played anything. And to get that athlete back in our sport again, we need that.
Yeah.
We need some of these big time football, basketball players to choose baseball. Yeah,
Yeah. You see a lot of NFL players kind of teasing it a little bit when you see Russell Wilson going down to Yankee
yeah,
camp.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, there are other players that have gone down to baseball, whether it's to learn how to slide, when you're playing football or just learn the fundamentals of the game. When you talked about earlier about players being more involved, you talked about, Hank Aaron, you talked about other players walking through the streets and just interacting and ingratiating themselves with the fan base and with kids, especially. When I see the younger generation, I look at a Hunter Green who gives great advice to young kids, who holds a camp every year, obviously except for this year, unfortunately, but normally he holds a camp every year. Joe Adele, who are some of the up and coming stars. What do they have to do? What responsibility do they need to maintain in order to continue to grow the game?
They're obviously doing some great work early on in their young careers, and we're going to have to see more of that because we need kids to identify with them. So you think about what segregation did. See, it doesn't matter how much money Satchel Paige made, how much money Buck O'Neil made. Nick, they lived in the same neighborhood I did. And I saw them every single day. And I aspired to be just like them, not just for their baseball prowess, but I saw them conduct themselves and operate as men. And so it's important that through this emulation process that kids are able to identify with those sports heroes, if they want to follow a similar path. And if they want to fall in love with this game, to see someone who is having success in this sport, but to actually be able to touch them, to be there and not just see them from afar. And that's really important, particularly in this sport. It really is. And so I absolutely applaud those young people for what they're doing as they try to carve out their path in this sport. And I still say, and I tell kids all the time, man, outside of playing quarterback in the NFL, which again, that is the marquee position. As I sit here and talk to you today, our great young quarterback here in Kansas City just signed a $400 million contract extension. And Pat would have been a great baseball player.
Oh, yes.
He would have been, his father obviously was a great ball player, and he would have been a great baseball player. But if you got a chance to be the NFL, a starting quarterback in the NFL, that's a different story. But other than that, man, that athlete certainly needs to look at baseball as an option because, man, I want to see our kids get some of this money they're giving away.
Oh, absolutely. In your estimation, do you think we'll see another two-sport athlete, whether it be football and baseball or something to that combo?
I don't know. I really don't, because I think about the guys that I've gotten to know. People don't, when we talk about the great athletes, they don't talk about Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield got drafted in 3 professional sports. He got drafted by the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the NBA, and he also got drafted by the ABA. And Dave didn't even play college football, and he still got drafted. And so, great athlete. And then, of course, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, these guys who were classic 2-sport stars. Deion Sanders' first love was baseball. Now, he obviously was a Hall of Fame football player, but his first love was baseball, which again tells you that this sport meant something to us once upon a time. And I'm hoping that it will mean something to us again. But let me say this, Nick, it is not just incumbent on Major League Baseball to help us fall in love with baseball again. Baseball has to become important in our community again. And when it does, then we will make sure that we take every necessary measure so our kids can play this game. Man, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Because there are other opportunities. But, we want them to fall in love with baseball. We want them to be nurtured in this sport. Because I can tell you now, you learn a lot about yourself playing this game. Because as you well know, baseball at its crux is a game of failure. You fail more times than you succeed in this sport. Man, 3 hits every 10 trips to the plate, you are a Hall of Famer. Yeah, you're a Hall of Famer, but you failed 7 times, in the midst of this thing. And so you learn something about yourself. You learn the ability to overcome adversity. And you think about it. Our sport is the only sport, major sport, that you're on offense and you don't have the ball. That's how tough baseball is. It's a tough game to play, but it's a game that everybody can play because your physical stature doesn't determine whether you can play this game. You can be 5'7" like Jose Altuve, or you can be 6'7" and weigh 270 pounds like Aaron Judge. And so it's that game that anybody can play. Again, my friend Buck O'Neill would say you could have two 80-year-old men sitting on the couch watching a baseball game, and a guy drops a pop fly, and the first words that come out of their mouth, hell, I could have caught that. Yeah, but if LeBron goes up and misses a dunk, we ain't all saying we could have done that. But that's the beauty of baseball, and we want our children to have that opportunity to see if they do love this game. Because I can tell you now, ain't nothing like the first time you swing that bat and you square that ball up. That's a feeling that will stay with you for the rest. It's like hitting a golf ball square. Now, I don't hit it square too often, but when I do, that's what keeps me coming back.
I hear that. I wanted to ask you too, this being the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues being honored by Major League Baseball, what does that mean to you and all of the great hard work, the long hours, the sacrifice that you put in, your great staff as well? What does that mean when you have an organization like Major League Baseball honor the Negro Leagues and making sure they're recognized and presented in the right way?
Man, it means the world to us. Naturally, we're disappointed that a pandemic derailed many of the events that we had planned for this year. And we were so excited about the potential of what this 100th anniversary platform was going to do for Negro Leagues history in general, but specifically for this museum. And so to have this pandemic come in at this time and basically derail so many of our plans, I'd be lying to say that it didn't hurt. But this story is about resiliency. And this museum is about resiliency. And so, as I say oftentimes, if you're going to be a steward of this story, and you can't wallow in self-pity. No, you've got to figure out, to use a bad baseball analogy, coronavirus was essentially that big right-hander who threw one high and tight and knocked you down. So now you got to dust yourself off and get back in the batter's box and figure out how you're going to hit it. And I think that's the mindset that we take here. We draw from the spirit of the Negro Leagues to try and help us get through what has been one of the most challenging times, not only for the Negro League Baseball Museum, but for virtually every small business in this country, and certainly every museum and cultural institution in this country. So now you get into a mode of trying to salvage as much of this year-long celebration that we had planned. And of course, we're going to roll the majority of the big events over into 2021. But that was the genesis of this most recent Tip Your Cap to the Negro Leagues campaign. June 27th was supposed to be our national day of recognition with Major League Baseball. And back in February, we announced a year-long celebration. You touched on it in the opening. Major League Baseball and the Players Association made a generous $1 million gift to the Negro Leagues Museum in support of the museum and the centennial celebration. And of course, we announced this year-long plan of events, including a National Day of Recognition that would have been scheduled for June 27th, where all 30 Major League Baseball teams, in an unprecedented show of solidarity, were going to honor the Negro Leagues. Now, there have been a number of teams who've done their own salute to the Negro Leagues. We do one here every year with the Kansas City Royals and places like Pittsburgh and Detroit and Cleveland. They've all periodically done Negro League celebrations, but this was going to be the first time that all 30 Major League teams participated. They were going to wear our centennial patch, and in that effort, we were going to launch an in-stadium Tip Your Cap to the Negro Leagues. As you well know, in our sport, there's nothing more honorable you can do than just a simple tip of the cap. And so, I knew that opportunity was going to be lost. Hell, we didn't even know if baseball was going to be played, no less when it was going to be played. And
Right.
really, you didn't want this kind of celebration to take place in an empty stadium. And so, in an effort to try and salvage it, I came up with this crazy idea, and I've been tinkering with this for years, and we just never really found the right time to do it. And so I came up with this idea to do a virtual tip your cap. After all, I've been doing these same kinds of things that you and I are doing right now for the better part of the time that we shut down in March through right now. And so I said, well, what if we could get people to take a picture or a video of them tipping their cap in recognition of the 100th anniversary of the Negro League? I called my good friend Joe Posnanski, my brother. And while we're not biological brothers, we're about as close as brothers. And every time, Nick, that I have a crazy idea, he's the first person that I call. And so I called Joe. I said, Joe, I got this crazy idea. I'm waiting for him to tell me that it's a crazy idea. Well, he didn't tell me it was a crazy idea. As a matter of fact, he said, Bob, it's a great idea. He calls his business partner, Dan McGinn, who's an incredible communication strategist, got an office there in the DC area. He calls Dan, and then Dan says, it's not a crazy idea. It's a great idea. And the three of us go to work, and in basically a 2-week time frame, we pull together what has now moved, as I say, from a campaign to an actual movement called Tip Your Cap to the Negro Leagues. And we launched it last Monday, and man, we came out blazing. We came out with the big bats. We had 4 U.S. presidents tipping their cap in honor of the Negro Leagues in President Obama, President Clinton, President George W. Bush, and even President Jimmy Carter, who, of course, his health is not great, but he loved the idea so much that he wanted to be a part of it. And while he was too ill to actually take a video message, he wrote a very heartfelt letter. And to me, that actually means just as much that he wanted to be involved with this. And so the 4 presidents tipped their cap. But then there's Michael Jordan, there's Magic Johnson, Billie Jean King, Bob Costas, General Colin Powell, Stephen Colbert, Conan O'Brien. This is before we even get to former and current major leaguers, who I always felt like we had a chance to reach them. But when you start to pull these incredible individuals and folks from other disciplines in life, that's when you know you got something. And all of a sudden, this crazy idea has grown into this almost revolution in terms of people tipping their caps in honor of the Negro Leagues. And so it fills me with great pride that we were able to take this crazy idea and turn it into something special. But you know what, Nick? I really think the timing of this couldn't be better. We're obviously engaged and embroiled in a time of social unrest in this country, unlike anything that we've seen since the 1960s, all stemming from the death, particularly of George Floyd, but other African Americans who have died at the hands of those who are supposed to protect and serve us. And then, of course, we're still dealing with a health pandemic. And so the timing of this campaign couldn't have been better, because I think people needed to find something positive that they could wrap their arms around and to get people engaged in this manner. And so for me, if it's the winning spirit of the Negro Leagues that resonates with folks, that is part of the healing process in this country, then it means the world to me. It means the world to our team here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And I hope that it helps elevate the awareness of this rich piece of history. Because again, this museum is a social justice museum.
Yes.
It is a civil rights museum. Nick, is just seen through the lens of baseball, but it's also triumph over that adversity. And quite frankly, if you're going to know the Black experience in this country, man, it can't be just the downtroddenness that has been a part of my experience. It cannot just be only me being sprayed by water hoses and me having the dogs released on me as it was so prevalently done during the midst of the civil rights movement, or the police brutality that unfortunately is still following us along this journey today. You also need to know my success story. And the Negro Leagues is one of those great success stories. And so we hope that we are part of the solution of helping people. And I'm just wanted to subscribe to the belief that the more we know about one another, the easier it is for us to get along with one another. But through the lens of baseball, we find that we have far more in common than we do differences. And our differences are not things that we should be running from. We should be embracing them. But too oftentimes in this country, we run from those who don't talk like me, don't look like me, don't think like me, don't worship like me. And we've got to get out of that mode of thinking that just because we don't do things the same way, that makes us bad. No, no, that just makes us different. And we need to celebrate our differences. And so the museum is obviously very honored to have a voice in this process. And hopefully people will take notice of the great work that we're doing here in Kansas City to keep this history alive.
Absolutely. Two quick things before I let you go. I know you're a busy man, so thank you so much once again for coming on. You talked about social climate, what we're fighting against right now: racism, systemic racism, oppression, police brutality, justice, and even just reparations when it comes to slavery that we've endured the last several centuries.
Mm-hmm.
How important, you coming from the media side at one point in time, working with the Kansas City Star, you won numerous awards on the marketing and advertising side as well. How important is Black media in today's climate and just period?
Tremendously important. It was tremendously important when we look at the formation of the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues happened at the urgence of the Black press. It was the Black press that was pushing for Black baseball to have an organized body. And it's still important. We've got to be able to tout our story whenever and however we can. And so while we don't have the dirt of Black media that we once had, I right up the street from us, it's still the old Kansas City Call. They still produce a weekly Black paper. And you still have a few of those that are still around right now, but it makes those other platforms even more meaningful as part of this process. And we've got to be part of the process that is making sure that people are held accountable. And the media offers a tremendous platform along those lines that can create that. And while it absolutely, again, fills my heart with joy to see so many young people engaged and involved. Now, the circumstances obviously are devastating, but the results of those circumstances, to see so many people engaged in this process, out there protesting and using their voices. Now we got to go vote. Yeah. And so all these efforts to now register people who maybe have not been a part of the political process, because you don't want that energy to go for naught. Because what we have to do is right now deal with the system that allow these things to happen. I don't know if I'll change your heart. I really don't. If your heart is hardened with hate, then that probably is not going to change. But what we can do is effectively change the system that allows those individuals to be empowered to abuse that power without any kind of circumstances for their actions. And that systematically is what we all can do. But it starts with going to the polls and making sure that we vote for those who are going to carry that agenda for us. And so I told some young people here recently, man, you got to go to and vote as if your life depends on it, because your life may very well depend on it. And so, that's the next step. And as I told the young people, man, protesting is hard work. Nick, it makes you tired. There's a lot of emotion. And we all went through an array of emotions when we witnessed one of the most heinous things that I've ever seen in my life. And this is nothing new. We knew that these things were happening, but we witnessed it. And it was done so cavalierly, which hurt even more because now we understand that there was total disregard for human life. And so this played out in such a vile, vivid way that if that didn't affect you, and man, you don't have a soul. You really don't. You
Right.
don't have a soul. And so I may not change your heart, but we can change some things that will make and hold people accountable. And that's the first step in the process.
Absolutely. I've always said the power of Black media, especially with social media being
Yes.
where it is today. We are the ones that are keeping these names alive, those that have not went viral and those names that have went viral. And I'm sure you saw a lot of PSAs, a lot of public statements written out saying that, hey, we want to go against systemic racism, whether it be a sports franchise or sports league or entertainment company or what have you. And my simple suggestion was this: since most leagues are 70+% Black, why don't you allow Black-owned media that's legit to come in and cover your games and cover your sport more, whether it be baseball, whether it be basketball, football, or what have you?
No, and I think those are legitimate things that need to be on the table. And so when I did a roundtable here recently with 6 young African-American major leaguers, the interesting thing about it, Nick, is that they're going to walk into a dugout or clubhouse where they may be the only Black face from an American standpoint. There are probably some Spanish-speaking brothers in that clubhouse. So baseball is a little bit different. So you expect the athletes from the NBA and the NFL to be vigilant in this because, again, they govern so much of the workforce, 75, almost 80% of the workforce. But when the Major League Baseball athletes do this, they're pretty isolated. They're pretty isolated. But what I'm seeing is their teammates are coming along with them. And that's the sign of progress. Because we know, you and I both know, it cannot just be Black folks out there fussing about this.
Exactly.
No, nothing will ever get done. It will take a multitude of people joining forces and mobilizing to create the needed change that has to be done. Yeah, because if it's us just doing it, well, people just say, well, they just complaining. That's all they do is complain. Yeah, but when we all witness this, it's time, and I think we're seeing good people who so oftentimes are silent when these things happen because maybe it doesn't impact them.
Right.
Well, it impacted them this time. And so a lot of those silent good people are not being silent anymore. And that's what gives me the hope. And granted, now I'll be the first to admit, I'm the eternal optimist. Yeah, that optimism abounds. But that is what gives me the hope that this effort that is being driven by so many young people will not go in vain, that we will get some things done that will help alleviate some of these issues that we're facing. Again, will it completely eradicate? I mean, you're always going to have a bad seed somewhere. But what we have to do is make sure that there are extreme consequences for those who perpetrate these kinds of hateful acts. And once there are consequences, it will make people stop to think about what they're doing. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. And so, you hope that is the case.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Once again, I can't say this enough. Thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing all of your wisdom, your journey, your knowledge. I could talk to you all day. I know you're a very busy man, so please let everybody know where they can go to join the Tip Your Cap 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And where they can continue to follow you and all of your great work.
Yeah, no, we do. We encourage you to take a photograph or even a short video tipping your cap in honor of the Negro Leagues. You can post them at photos@tippingyourcap.com, or you can visit our website at www.tippingyourcap.com to not only see the scores of people who have already done it and the incredible people who are part of this campaign, but you can also learn how to make sure you upload your picture or video. We want you to be part of this movement to pay honor in this 100th anniversary year of the Negro League. And then, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at NLBM Pres, Prez, same username on Instagram. I'm on both of those social media platforms. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm on there.
Hey, you know what? You're doing it like a true champ. I tell you what. So, you know, if you didn't know what you're doing a great job because you're on point. Absolutely.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you, man. It's been a welcome opportunity, and I hopefully look forward to coming back and talking some more.
Absolutely. Well, I'm tipping my cap to the Negro Leagues and to your great work and service, sir, because it does not go unnoticed. So thank you so much. I'm definitely going to get down to the Negro League Museum once we get through this pandemic and be able to really soak in all the wealth of knowledge and information that you all have established down there in Kansas City. And I'm gonna get me some barbecue too.
Well, you know, I tell you what, it's the best barbecue on the face of the planet, hands down, hands down. So no, we look forward to welcoming you to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and we appreciate what you're doing to help voice this history. You know, for those of you who are interested in supporting the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, please visit our website at NLBM.com. Great gift shop. There's some great gear that you can buy to represent, or you can become a member of this organization, or if you're so inclined, just make a contribution. We cannot allow the legacy of the Negro Leagues to die. It has to play on.
100%. Well, I'm waiting on that jacket to come back in my size, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and grab it. Thank you so much, the one and only Mr. Bob Kendrick, the Negro League Baseball Museum president. Thank you so much, sir, and we'll talk to you soon.
Nick, thank you, man.